Can you hear me? Yes. As you already know, this is the incredible Walton Goggins. Everyone. My name is Catherine Van Arendonk. I'm a writer at Vulture. I'm so grateful to all of you for coming out this evening to watch the ending of Fallout, which is, I think you're all going to be incredibly excited for this show. We're going to talk about a little bit actually about episode 4, which is the episode that you're nominated for. We're going to hope that you guys have seen a good amount of this show. Obviously, you have to have because it's so fantastic. But I just wanted to start by asking you about how you became involved with this show. My understanding is that you just very much wanted to work with Jonathan Nolan, yeah?
Yeah, can you hear me? I don't need a microphone.
He does not.
No, I got a phone call from my agents that Jonathan Nolan wanted to get on the phone with me with these two writers, Geneva, who is a friend of mine. I did Tomb Raider with her, and then Graham Wagner, whom I've been a fan of for a very, very long time. And we got on the phone, and literally, 2 minutes into the conversation, I said, I'm in. They said, well, don't you want to know who you're playing? I said, it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. Well, don't you want to read a script? Sure, whatever. And then he said, okay, well, we want you to play this irradiated kind of cowboy who's been walking a post-apocalyptic wasteland for 200 years, and he doesn't have a nose. And I said, hey, you know what? Maybe I should read those scripts, And I read them and was just so taken with it, really, in the first 30 minutes.
What was happening in those first 2 minutes of conversation where you were in before you knew about the nose?
I think it was a lot of I love Memento and every other Westworld and all the movies that Jonathan had written, and I'm just a very, very, very big fan of his.
Yeah. So you get the scripts, you're looking at them. I would imagine there are pieces of them that feel a little bit familiar. You love Westerns, and so there are elements of that character, of the character, well, there's sort of two characters that you play. They're different versions of the same person. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how Westerns play into how you see both the Ghoul and then his earlier, his early life version.
Well, I think I'd have to start this conversation by talking about the first 7 pages or 8 pages that I read, which was the opening of the series, and how it takes us from the life that we knew before the bombs were dropped and actually dropping the bombs, and I was so viscerally moved by that on the page, that experience for me and my imagination, thinking about kind of playing it. And then, like you said, kind of reading as the show kind of progressed and understanding that they were touching on these themes of the good, the bad, and the ugly, and morally kind of moral ambiguity and who are these people, and the good guy becomes the bad guy, becomes the good guy, and I do. I love that genre and watched a lot of movies that I have seen before, but kind of in preparation for this, really kind of looking, not so much for the Ghoul, even though that was kind of a part of it. It was pretty clear to me. But Cooper Howard he's a person that lives in the world. He is to me, he is a 1950s Western movie star, and so I just really wanted to understand who his contemporaries were. What jobs did he lose out on? Like, what jobs did he get? The man from
In your head, do you know what jobs he lost out on?
I think I believe that Cooper Howard came to Hollywood from the middle of America, like from probably Oklahoma, from a really good family. He wasn't escaping or running away from anything. He's just a guy who kind of came out and could ride a horse, and somebody saw him and said, "Well, hey, why don't you should do this for a living?" And he did it, and he's just the kind of guy that you want to hang out with. He's got a great sense of humor and a real ease about him as a person. And an actor didn't show up for work one day, and the director said, "Hey, could you say a couple of these lines?" And he said, "Yeah, okay. So how much does that pay? Yeah, it plays a lot better than riding a horse." And he was good at it. And then he got another job, and lo and behold, then he becomes he has a career.
Do you usually build backstories like that for your characters?
Well, I don't. It's a little. I just approach this a little differently. I think without getting too much kind of into the process. It's just the school that I went to and the guy who was my sensei, if you will. I don't look at it as backstory, right? Because then that's just that's a step removed from the process. So then you would have to be first and foremost an actor playing a character, writing a backstory for the character that you're playing. And I just skip all of those steps. And my teacher and the way that he kind of talked about this process is it's a child's game. You hold up a mirror to nature, and you turn yourself over to an imaginary set of circumstances. It's really that simple, and it's that complicated, right? Because your ego really has to get out of the way. So instead of writing down these things, I just read the script like 250 times. Like Anthony Hopkins, that's where I got it from. So that's the man.
Or if you're going to take from somebody, I mean, Anthony
you take
Hopkins
it from him,
seems-
and that's who my teacher, talked about, and I got the opportunity to ask Tony when we worked together a long time ago. And then over the course of just kind of reading it, then the words cease to exist, and then you're all of a sudden living in a world that transcends the words, right? And then that's when you're reading it, and then your imagination just goes wild. It could be anything, right? And so that's really kind of my jumping off point, and that's what it was for me.
So
And I do that with everything.
with everything,
Everything,
right?
yeah.
So you know every moment of Boyd Crowder's childhood, also.
I do, yeah, I do, yeah. Maybe not every moment. Some of those moments, no one wants to know about, but yeah, I know a lot of them.
So, but you are playing this character at two very different moments in his life. Does that process change when you're kind of approaching these different elements, or are you having to think about that play process differently when you're thinking he's here versus he's now in this apocalyptic wasteland place? Or is it essentially just coming to the script in the same way?
It's a great question, and God, I'd love to see someone else play this character. It would be great if it was a play, and then you could, like, maybe if you started it, and I'd just like to see 3 or 4 other actors kind of step in there, and just to see how they would do it differently. For me, and reading it for the first time, and then reading it over and over again, what I realized is that I had to understand who Cooper Howard was, to understand fully everything that the Ghoul had lost. And that life, what that life was really like for Cooper Howard, and how much he loved his daughter, and how much he loved his wife and his family and his group of friends, and then kind of building from there. Whenever you kind of really on paper you say, well, he's been alive for 200 years, that's hard to wrap your head around, right? It's like, okay, well, really, has he been alive for 200 years? But I just don't think about it in those terms. It's like, okay, well then let's break down these 200 years. Like, what does that really look like, And I started with like day one. Okay, well, what happened, the moment after the bomb dropped? Did he wake up 5 days later? Did he get up immediately? 3 days later? Was his daughter alive? Was she dead? I have my ideas about that, but I still don't know, and that'll be explored in the story. But then I thought about, okay, well, what is it? What was it like the first time that somebody tried to kill him for food, or for water, for resources, right? And then what was it like the first day that he had to kill someone for those very things, right? And the disintegration of like a true morality, or your North Compass, or whatever. I can't think about the term right now, but what is your true north, and just the disintegration of everything that he knew. I mean, he comes from an amoral and is now living in a full. It comes from a moral into an amoral existence.
I did want to ask a little about the makeup, and I wrote down a couple of quotes you have said about the makeup. Quote, extremely anxiety-provoking, extremely uncomfortable, and, quote, I scared the shit out of myself.
And we get to do it again. So excited.
So excited. You have had significant makeup processes in the past.
You know, I mean, I have. I mean, you know, I mean, it's different becoming a woman than it is becoming a radiated ghoul.
From Sons
you
of
know?
Anarchy, yes, yeah.
And I've done. I mean, I did this a similar process for a friend of mine's movie down in South Africa when we were doing Tomb Raider, and they just happened to be filming it down there. And that process was, I only did it for 3 or 4 days, and I did the application 3 or 4 times. And I hated it. Like I couldn't stand to look at myself in the mirror. I had them cover the mirror, and the process of sitting still for that long, and then carrying the weight of that around. It's a lot. I mean, it is a lot. But we did. So it was a mindset. We get there 3 hours before everyone else, and the process begins. And it's me and my buddy Jake Garber, and we start putting on the pieces and then you just have to, kind of work through it. And I'm a person who likes to move. And this required, being still for, a long period of time to me. So we just watched movies every morning.
What movies did you watch?
Oh, God. The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, Rio Bravo, Cheyenne, Cowboys, all of Leone's stuff, 2
and
or
then
3
that
times.
makes it into the Ghoul, I imagine.
The Wild Bunch. Well, the one that really spoke to me was Henry Fonda in Once Upon a Time in the West. It was he was so cool. He was so quiet and cool, and didn't waste a lot of energy with movements, and the Ghoul doesn't either. And I thought, okay, well, that's something I can work with, and then I, watching Butch Cassidy again, and seeing what a rascal Paul Newman is, and just how it's Paul Newman, and I thought, oh well, that's an interesting balance, kind of between those two worlds, right? And hi, how are you? And so it was in between those two that I felt like. Yeah, this makes sense to me.
You work a lot with Ella Purnell,
I do.
and I'm just curious how they feel like they are starting at very opposite ends of a spectrum and sort of working their way into a kind of middle space a little bit in some of the season.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wonder what the conversations with her, as you were talking about how to play those scenes, where your characters are, how you're playing against each other.
Again, a great question. No one's asked that question. The truth is, we didn't talk about it. We didn't really rehearse anything beyond one scene that we kind of read before we started. And Ella has her process. Her process is different than mine, but I knew that we would kind of find her way, and she was such a joy to work with. And you couldn't start from 2 points on a map that are that polar opposite, right? I mean, this is a person who was left to die on the surface, and this other person was her morality is based on one of convenience, and so. Yeah, we didn't really talk about it. Every day and every scene just kind of happened organically. And Jonathan works really quickly. He likes to work quick. And so there's not a lot of time to kind of think about it in those terms. But yeah, it worked out. And in some ways, we got to know each other. But I think maybe both of us intentionally didn't get to know each other until the ending, until we finished.
Well, I know you have to fly out of here, but I have a short series of questions that I would like to ask.
Okay.
I want to do a game.
Hard.
Oh, I know. You're going to make it. I believe you.
Here.
We're
Hey,
gonna-
thank you all so much for being here. Are you kidding me? I thank you very, very much.
Yeah. All right. We're going to do Would You Rather Apocalypse version. You ready?
Okay.
Would you rather...
You guys want to answer this? Okay,
would
go
you
ahead.
rather survive the apocalypse or not survive the apocalypse?
Great question. I'm a survivor.
There we go. Great. Would you rather be a vault dweller or a wastelander?
A wastelander.
Would you join a faction or would you do it all on your own?
Well, I'm a Scorpio, so I do it all on my own.
Nice, nice. Would you rather drink out of an irradiated toilet or get your finger cut off?
Well, it depends on which finger, because this is my trigger finger. Probably drink out of an irradiated toilet.
Nice, nice. Fight a swarm of giant cockroaches or one enormous mutant lake monster?
You know, I don't like big parties, so I would just the one big monster.
Okay, you're in the Fallout universe, but you are not the Ghoul. You are either Boyd Crowder or Baby Billy. Which one?
Baby Billy, why not? I mean, you know, he would last a day, or maybe he wouldn't. I don't know. Maybe he would. He's a cockroach. He would outlive everyone.
You're in the Fallout universe. Would you prefer to get stuck in a desert apocalypse or a water world style apocalypse?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, hearing that the Kevin Costner stories about Waterworld, right? Yeah, I heard that. It was just horrible being on a boat for that long. So yeah, just keep my feet on land. I'm going to take a desert.
Great.
You know, really quickly,
please.
we were in Namibia. We shot in Namibia for a period of this. A lot of it was in New York. You know, we did the stages here in New York, but it was the climate in the desert that I was most comfortable in all of this makeup. When we started my very first day in New York, the heat index was 106 degrees, and I was sweating out of my eyeballs. Yeah. So I like the desert.
Yeah, great. Gun or sword?
Gun.
Yeah. All right, so my understanding is that you can both clog and two-step. If you're the Ghoul and you have to dance, are you clogging or are you two-stepping? And what's the difference?
Well, I could
Yeah,
do
please.
both.
Yeah, yes.
No. I mean, you need kind of music, but if a two-step is like this, and this.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So it's like this, and it's a beautiful, because you're with a partner. These shoes don't work well on this carpet.
Sure.
But it's 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and then you twirl and you do all of that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up in honky tonks. My mom was a dancer.
Yeah.
And then clogging is it's just here. It's shuffle and
Yeah.
So, I was on a clogging.
Which
team
would
with
the
my
Ghoul
mama.
do? Wow.
I don't know, man. The Ghoul is cool. I mean, I don't know. What's cooler? Clogging is pretty cool, but two-stepping.
You think the rhythm
cool.
is closer? Yeah.
Maybe I don't know. Maybe he does them both.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe he break dances.
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you so much for being here. I want to thank everyone so much for being here. It has been truly a pleasure. And I'm just so excited about this show and so thrilled that we get a chance to watch more of it in the future.
Thank you so much for the conversation, Catherine. And for Vulture hosting the screening, thank you so much. And again, I wish I could stay here all night. Thank you all so much for coming out.